Welcome back to another Kicking Tables. My name is Sean Evans.
And I'm Tico.
And today we'd like to welcome the co-creators of the board game Syndicate, Joshua Pollack and Greg Dietz. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey there.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here.
So your
thanks for having us
Kickstarter
on.
starts next week. You guys must be excited to finally get this out there. It's been a long road, but why don't we start off with telling us, what is Syndicate?
So, Syndicate, it's a brainchild of Josh and I. So, Syndicate is a 1 to 5 player game, which is, I describe it as a sci-fi space mafia game. So, but in board game terms, it is a thematic 4X game with a slight twist of Euro style in it.
And what was the inspiration behind this game? Like, everybody's out there playing games with their friends, and you're like, man, I'd really like a game that does this, and you get this idea. What was that inspiration for you? What made you say, I want to make this game?
I think I'll start and Greg jump in because I think we probably have different inspirations that really came together to come in, to build Syndicate. For me, when I play a game, what I love is the interplayer dynamics. I think I love some one-player games, but I really love games where there's a huge element of either working together or conspiring against certain players. Sometimes setting traps, and so for us, that's a ton of fun. And that was the center, one of the center pillars of this game. Not the only pillar, but one of the center pillars is about how you, because you're one of many criminal syndicates, and there's other criminal syndicates floating around with the authoritarian government also trying to crack down on everyone. And so at sometimes you might want to work together. At other times you want to team up on one of the other syndicates and take them down because there can only be one winner. But the game is filled with traps and fun twists and trading and stuff like that. And that for me is the most fun part of any board game is how you interact with other players
and attack them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, yeah. So from my perspective, as Josh was saying, so in Syndicate, you play one of 10 of these unique criminal syndicates, vying for control in this distant star system we call Arcturus. For me, board games have always been a big part of my life. In fact, a big part of Josh and I's friendship. We grew up together, actually, and also has science fiction. I'm probably one of the biggest science fiction nerds that almost anybody will ever meet.
I'm with you, Greg. I'm with you there.
Yeah, right. And naturally, we wanted to combine those two things together, board games and science fiction. Josh and I are both also like to write our own science fiction stories.
Nice.
So also, not only in building this game, but we're building a whole universe around this, and that's one of the major points of this that we love is that Syndicate is the first game, but it's kind of like the first element of this entire universe that we're unveiling to the public, and we're hoping to build it out even more. We have tons of lore and such on our website, and that we'll be releasing over the course of the campaign. It's not going to stop there, we hope.
That is very exciting. Like, you hope to, once this game's out, to expand on this universe and keep adding to it? Like, do you see that? You said you like writing. Do you see yourselves actually writing like a novel based in this universe, or do you just want to create more games?
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is both. And it's
nice.
Not that we hope to write a novel. We've actually written quite a bit of a lot of one already, and are releasing it chapter by chapter on our site and to our newsletter signups. So it's out there and it's coming out slowly, but it's coming.
That's awesome. Build a whole world around your game. That's incredible.
So, quick question: when looking at your Kickstarter preview page, it's listed as Syndicate Redux. So is this a different variation? Has this been out there in the wild before? Is this what does the Redux tell us?
Let me explain. I guess it's a great question. The answer is we actually tried to launch. We've been working on Syndicate for a few years now, and we tried to launch initially on June 23rd. So a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And when we launched, we learned a lot of stuff about what consumers want and what they don't want. And we had layered in some things that, while we thought were fun for some people, in general, didn't get a lot of traction, but also had a high cost to produce, minimum order runs for certain things that not a lot of people wanted. That raised the overall cost of our, manufacturing. We took in a lot of feedback and changed a lot of stuff around. We were going to release solo add-on later after the campaign. There turned out to be a lot for that, so we decided to leak some of it out in this first campaign. We also are adding as a stretch goal a 3-dimensional player mat, which allows you to put pieces in place based on a lot of feedback we got from people from our first campaign. And there's a lot of other stuff coming down the pipeline. Greg and I, had a really tough discussion during our first campaign because we actually had a lot of traction in the first few days, and our focus above all else is to deliver a game that people, will really enjoy playing and will, feel like a very high quality product and exactly what people want. And we just felt in the scope of our initial campaign, there wasn't enough time, and we already had, there's only so many things you can change during a live Kickstarter. So we felt for the best of everyone, all the people that were putting their faith in us and all our backers to deliver the best product, the tough decision, but the best thing to do was to scrub that first campaign, take a couple months to retool it, and now we're relaunching it as the Redux.
Redux. So Redux means it's the best version of the game that the people are going to get.
Absolutely.
Well, excellent. That's great.
So you mentioned there's the different syndicates. How different does playing? There's 10 in the game. How different do each of them feel? Is there different strategy involved with playing different ones? Are you going to get a different experience if you pick one versus the other?
Yeah, absolutely. We base several of them on the the standard archetypes of space opera sci-fi, of course, and of course around kind of the mafia type aspects. And so there's several. One of the beautiful things about Syndicate, and I'm saying this, of course, as a creator, and I love Syndicate, but there's independent reviewers who also say this, that Syndicate is a very very polished game with a single goal, which is basically get the most money in the end, credits. But there's so many different variable ways to do that. One of the keys to that is the asymmetry in the 10 different faction syndicates that you can play. So there's some that are kind of combat oriented. There are ones that are politically oriented, and combat is focused on taking other people's stuff, while the political orientation is trying to gain political leverage, which is another one of the key resources in the system. And there is a non-player character called the Sovereign, which is the authoritarian government in this universe. And you can use your political influence to kind of skirt their laws, which actually impact other people heavily. Then there's the bankers. There are people who are cloners and scientists who make minions, and tons of different people. So, long answer is that there are many different ways to play this game. I'm trying to highlight a few of the key ones. Each one of these syndicates has a unique story behind it, which flows into the whole universe that we built.
Now,
what's your favorite syndicate?
Yes, both of you. You must have a favorite that you liked playing.
All right. Well, should we answer the 1, 2, 3? Phoenix. Now, there you go, man. So Phoenix is. What I was going to add to Greg as well is that there's a leveling up mechanism, which allows you to, in addition to the asymmetry that you start with, you can kind of branch off in different directions within that asymmetry, and kind of compound in one direction or divert back into a different direction of skill sets as the game develops and as different skills are needed. What I love about Phoenix are the tech-oriented syndicate, which means that they start with a higher tech level, which is how you level up your syndicate. So they have the most flexibility to kind of branch off in different directions. So a lot of creativity there in how you play and really flexible.
And Greg, what's your favorite?
Mine is the Altair group. So the Altairs have a fun story. So basically what they do is they go around stealing people's DNA and then creating clone copies of them called alt-synth. And then they will, that's their backstories. They will replace high-level people around the system, such as maybe a politician that is now replaced with a synthetic replicant of that the Altair group controls there. So originally they were actually a government-sanctioned research group, which broke off after their technology became too scary for even this,
Yeah.
genocidal, like totalitarian regime to handle. And a cool thing that they can do is when they attack people, they gain extra crew resource when they do it, which is a big advantage because crew is a major resource in controlling territory.
Well, it sounds like
Controlling the
you
different
guys
bases.
have put some amazing thought behind the stories for each of these. That's incredible. I love hearing about the backgrounds, and just it really does give you that sense of this is a whole world. This is a galaxy of things. That's amazing. It sounds like Syndicate is a wholly competitive game. You're playing against each other, but you also have the alert track in the game, which is similar to games that are cooperative. You're playing against the game itself. How does that alert track come into play? Are you playing against the game as well as your other players?
Absolutely. So you're all criminal syndicates trying to control the same limited resources and expand your empire and crossing paths. So there's a lot of interplayer competitiveness. But at the same time, you're criminals, and so there is a government entity trying to crack down on crime. And any of the negative actions of any syndicate will increase the alert level for everyone and increase the punishments that the non-playable character, Sovereign, which is the authoritarian regime, comes down on all the syndicates with. So you're simultaneously playing against everyone, but also on the same team as far as staying under the radar of the government.
Right. Are there other than that aspect you just mentioned, are there cooperative aspects to the game, or are you pretty much playing for yourself?
Sure. So there are some cooperative aspects. I mean, it is, you are a criminal syndicate, and so it is kind of a cutthroat, competitive game in that respect. But there is a great element of trading in the game, and so the trading is a bit different than a lot of these games. In one rule that I think is a lot of fun, which is that you can only trade when it is not your turn. So that means on your downtime, you'll be trading and interacting with other people and trying to cooperate with them against whoever's turn it is currently, and it kind of acts as a stimulant for people to kind of hurry up their turn so they don't miss out on different deals, or maybe cut off a deal as soon as they pass their turn. That deal might be ended if the person is next in line.
Right.
And so that trading element is a big part of that kind of high player interaction that you find in the game. And that's semi-cooperative, I guess. You can also split resource sharing on missions. So there are mission cards in this game where if a different entity, a different syndicate controls a certain base, which are planets, moons, space stations, you can actually, and you have a mission card, which are planet specific. You can actually do a cooperative mission, which is, think of it like if there's a crime boss in a city or in a planet. You can either do this mission behind their back and get the full reward,
Right.
but it's a higher likelihood of it not being successful. Well, as opposed if you ask for their grace and their permission, you have to loop them into the reward.
Right.
But it makes it easier for you. Did I miss anything, Josh?
I think it's a perfect summary. It's always cooperative until it's not.
That's great. It's like life. Now, earlier you mentioned it was a 1 to 5 player game. How will the solo game work?
I'm sorry.
Are you just playing against the game?
Exactly. So the solo campaigns are slightly different than the main game, right? So the main game is really player against player, building an empire, and hiding from the sovereign. Each of these solo campaigns is different and based on is a deep dive into one of the syndicates.
Oh, nice.
So one is a deep dive into the Nagata family. The Nagata family are renowned in the system for their ability to smuggle anything from anywhere at the ready checkpoint. So this mission involves a lot less combat and buying and building than you might see in the multiplayer game, and is a lot more focused on the smuggling aspect because that's what what this syndicate does best. And you'll see as we release the other solo campaigns that each one kind of is really honed in on one aspect,
Right.
or multiple aspects that are specific to that syndicate and their background lore. And what we like about the solo campaigns is while we've interwoven a lot of the broader universe we've written into the stories of the syndicates and all the story missions, there's a lot more, beneath the surface. And the solo campaigns allow us to really kind of dive in there.
Right.
So we have over 30 new missions, a lot more backstory with Nagata in this first campaign, and each of them has that same depth, where it's tons of new missions, tons of new backstory and lore. So it's been our, we think it's a lot of fun, and it's also been a lot of fun for us to write, and finally be able to weave in a lot of the stuff that we couldn't fit just due to lack of space.
That's awesome. So the single or the solo is literally a campaign. It's not just play the game solo. You're going to pick a campaign to play, and it's a very specific setup.
All right. With in regards to the game, how easy is the game going to be for like a light board game, collector to player to get into? Is it going to be something this is marketed more towards like the hardcore, or is this something that you can just bring out with your regular group where you've got some hardcore, some light strategy players? Is this something that you're going to want to steer away from with the light players, or is this something that anybody can pick up?
Let me start, and then Greg jump in. But our focus was twofold. One is design a game that is simple enough at the surface that people can pick it up pretty quickly, but there's a lot of depth beneath that surface that allows a player who really wants to get into it to really, they can spend hours and hours and hours trying to master it. So this, we mentioned the leveling up earlier. So this is a mechanism which, if you want to keep the game very simple, you could ignore and just focus on the basics. But if you want to take it to the next level, literally you can level up and really kind of fine tune your character and make all these adjustments. So and for us, that was a focus of development. We cut a lot of stuff out that we wanted to include, just because we're, from the beginning, we're trying to strike this balance. We had this target, which was, as I said, easy enough to pick up for anybody, but for that advanced player, for the heavy strategy player, there's a lot of stuff there as well for them to really kind of sink their teeth into.
Yeah, again, like independent reviewers had said that the game is pretty good to pick up. It's one of those games. I would say it's about the difficulty level of maybe Pandemic of learning.
Okay.
Okay.
And once you get it, it like clicks really fast. But it's also it only will take a couple rounds to get the basics of the game. And then also the video master here, Josh, has created some really great how to play videos, which we're actually embedding in the rulebook with QR codes throughout.
Nice.
So
very cool.
There'll be us explaining exactly how to do the rules, and it's very succinct. And we've gotten great feedback in that. It's really easy to pick up.
That's great.
So we wanted it accessible.
Yeah. Now, during your gameplay sessions, as you're building this game, what did you find was the most difficult part to get right, to really balance out before it was like perfect? Probably never really thought of that, now, did you?
We think about it all the time. This is where I come in. Greg and I both love the sci-fi lore and stuff, but Greg is the masterful writer. I'm more the data science nerd, so I'm running the Monte Carlos to try to find the right balance. And for sure, the testing for us was it was a long process, and we really tried to approach it scientifically. One of the initial constructs, in addition to this target of make it accessible for players, and that led to some tough decisions about what sort of elements do we want to remove from the base game or make kind of secondary. A second target was, how do we make a game that runs about an hour to an hour and a half, but unlike some games, which I'll throw Monopoly under the bus because I think Hasbro won't get too offended, make much money from it. But Monopoly is a game where you can very quickly take a lead, and the lead is compounding, and so it's very easy to know who's going to win 30 minutes into a 4-hour game.
Sure.
And it becomes quite boring for players. So for us, part of the balancing was, how do you create alternative avenues? So if one player takes a dominant lead in one path to victory, and as Greg gave a great summary earlier, there's different paths to victory. You can go through brute force, or buying and building and exploring, or bribing the government to stay under the radar of their police crackdowns and such. So there's many avenues to victory. And even if one avenue starts to be dominated by one player, you can always pivot at any point in the game. And that keeps games close and interesting because you never know what players are working on behind the scenes. And for us, that was quite difficult to balance, and it took a lot of anytime you have asymmetry in character development, and especially when you compound that with player leveling, the balancing kind of becomes exponentially more difficult to do, and it requires more testing. But for us, that was definitely a goal, to keep the game interesting throughout. How do you have the bell curve of distributions to the data science perspective quite tight until the very end, so players can always try different stuff out and still have a shot at winning.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
So, post Kickstarter, what are your plans post Kickstarter? Is this going to be getting a retail release? We'll see this in game stores and like expansions and stuff like that, because this universe seems perfect for expanding upon. Will there be like physical release expansions? How will that work?
I'm knocking on wood. And Greg, so you go ahead and knock too. But absolutely, this is we love this. It's been a long process and a tough one, but certainly a labor of love and something that Greg and I both, well, speaking for myself, I'm sure Greg will agree, but we both love doing. And we have so much stuff. I mentioned the solo campaigns, which we're including some of, but only the tip of the iceberg. We have, and as I said before, we cut a lot of stuff from the base game just to make it in a package that is accessible to players. There's expansion packs that are already written, ready to go, almost. And we have so much exciting stuff to release, and we hope this is a Kickstarter. Allows us to get into stores. But knock on wood.
Yes.
Knock on wood for sure.
Well, gentlemen, I wish you all the best on your Kickstarter. It starts August 18th, and how long will it be on Kickstarter? A month? 28 days? How long?
For about 3 weeks. So we end on September 10th.
September 10th. So definitely check out this game. It sounds amazing. I love the concept. And Greg, when you said it was as easy to learn as Pandemic, you just mentioned my favorite game. I mean, I have every Pandemic game there is, so that's the bonus points right there. Before we let you guys go, what is the one thing about this game you feel everyone needs to know? What is that little gem about the game that you just love?
It's a good question. I mean, I've been hammering the lore all day, and I think that's a big thing. But I mean, it's an interesting twist on a lot of things that usually you're playing kind of the good guy. This one, everybody's bad in this game.
Yes.
And it's all about the perspective that you come at it, and that kind of also reflects in some of the backstories of some of the characters. Nobody's actually evil to the core. It's just a function of the society that they're in. This is the type of game that you'll definitely want to play again and again, because there's so many ways that you can win this, and you'll see somebody do something that you didn't think about doing before. Right. And there's almost unlimited things that you can do, it seems.
That's great. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I'm really looking forward to this game. It sounds amazing. Congratulations on getting it to Kickstarter, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Awesome talking to you guys. Take care.
Hear this villainous scum. Your reign of terror is over. We will find you. We will destroy you. The Sovereign will prevail.